You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, well, everybody, it is actually Friday night, although it isn't for us right now. We are pre-recording this episode. Unfortunately, we couldn't be live with you guys tonight. I have to remember to keep saying tonight.
But we're here with you.
We are.
Anyway.
We're here with you guys anyway. Of course, as always, you can chat live. You can chat live even though we're not live. So we set this thing up as a premiere so the chatting can still be going on. We could be, but we probably won't be there. But, definitely chat amongst yourselves. And then, of course, comment about today's episode in the comments section. And hey, if you like this episode, don't forget to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, because it helps us out and it helps us be able to bring more of these great episodes to you. And of course, we're talking Star Wars, we're talking Andor, episode 6.
Yes.
So this one actually was definitely the most Star Wars. So this was exactly what we had always thought. I remember when we were talking about that we would wish that they would do some more genre-based Star Wars stuff, Star Wars horror movie and, stuff like that. One of the things that I think you brought up first was it would be really cool if they had like a Star Wars heist movie. And they sort of did that with the Mandalorian episode where they introduced Bill Burr and all those guys. When you first
kind of did it with Solo, too.
Yes, that's actually a good point. They did kind of do it with Solo too, where they had basic scenes, but this is really living up to what they said it was going to be, which is more or less a political thriller type, spy type of a series or something. And it really is, I think, finally living up to its promise. It was a long setup. It took us 6 episodes to get here. and there's some definite things throughout the episode that are reminiscent of Rogue One, because I think that in some ways they are trying to remind us that, hey, this guy's from Rogue One originally. So that was cool. There was, a lot of great dialogue. So, so far overall, I thought the episode was fantastic. And I apologize in advance because I did not have time to take extensive notes on this one like I've done on the other episodes. But the good news is, I, anyway, just watched it literally before we came on tonight. So it's still pretty fresh in my mind. So what are you thinking?
Well, yeah, this was this is the payoff, for that. For everything that that's led up until this point. I know people complain about it being slow, and I agree with it. Yes, it was slow. It's a slow burn, but I think that allowed a lot of depth to come up into the show. And then now we kind of have the big payoff where we last kind of saw our characters and our heroes, so to speak, kind of still getting to know each other, still kind of trying to figure out if we trust one another here. And there's still even some of that at the very beginning of this, but it does give us a big payoff, literally. All things considered. So yeah, I thought this was an excellent episode. I love even still, like, the depth of character, the things that you get to, it's the subtleties in the show. I think that's what we really have to focus on and pay attention to. It's the subtleties that tell so much about these characters. So it was a fun ride for me.
Yeah, and again, getting right into this, right? You brought it up. The very beginning, right out the gate, beginning of the episode, we have a really good conversation between Cassian, and I think that's Karras that he's talking to at first, where Karras is kind of, and I apologize if that's the wrong character, I'm pretty sure that's who it was. But, they're sort of continuing that whole, hey, I'm still a little nervous about this. It's still a little new. And again, it's another one of those quiet moments. And I think the temptation would be that, hey, they're spending a lot of time just on what is seemingly mundane. But really, this is the kind of thing that I think a lot of fans of the show in particular are appreciative of, which is the fact that you get more character development in this show than you do other Star Wars shows. You get a little bit deeper. You get into the thought process. I mean, we know that these guys are rebels, but why are they rebels? What are they fighting for? What is the thing? And it's not just all right, we're going into battle and we're, no, these people actually have a little bit of apprehension about it. Okay, man, I don't know if I'm actually going to come out of this. And they address that. And this is the first time that I think that they've really addressed it to this degree, where it's not so much this fun swashbuckling type of a thing, which was really what Lucas was trying to be, right? The whole Flash Gordon serial Saturday matinee kind of thing. It has gotten a little bit away from that, although there are elements of that. But it's deeper. And this is really, I think, what they were talking about when they would say, hey, this is Star Wars for adults. Because Lucas always said Star Wars was for kids. And I think you need to keep making the, Lucasian Star Wars, if I can invent that term. But, this is one of those things. And so, right out the gate, we're introduced with this really great conversation. And then in the next couple of scenes actually, it switches to the Imperial side of it. And now you get to see how the Imperials are thinking about, I believe they're called the Dani, the people that are actually, the Aldhani people, right, that are actually on the planet. And they're naturally making this pilgrimage up to the top, and they're talking about how, oh yeah, it started out in the thousands, and now there's like 60 people or something that have finally made it to the top, and they're kind of simple. We're just going to go through this whole ritual. We really don't care. I mean, it's really showing you how this entity that used to be the Republic has now changed into the Empire, and also the mindset. It's showing you how the mindset of these people have actually changed, which I think is just great. So right from the beginning, you have the first scene, which is basically with Karis and Cassian, and they're sharing this quiet moment about, hey, I'm kind of nervous about this. How do you even sleep? How do you, And then it's going to the Imperials, who basically are just not really caring about the culture or anything. They're just more or less tolerating these indigenous people and carrying on with their plans. So right away we get basically this juxtaposition of the two sides.
Yeah. I thought that was a really cool moment, like you said, right out the gate. The conversation between Cassian and Kaysen was really cool because, you really do get that insight as far as, okay, what are we doing this for? Why do why are we um putting ourselves at risk like this? How do you sleep? How do you deal with this? And you can see the different, he's just like, you know what? I'm glad you're here. And it's, you see the different perspectives that people have. And that's the thing. It's like no different than, once again, how we all as people of Earth, we could all look at one particular moment, but we all have different perspectives on how these moments kind of came to pass. And so you really get that aspect. But I did find it really hilarious. I mean, it's just me, but to see the Empire with Yeti cups and just standing there, just drinking coffee and stuff, just having this mundane, normal, like Monday morning conversation was cool to me. Like, I don't know why, but it's like, you see like these Imperials, they're not, walking around fearing Vader or anything like that and having to do these reports. It's just, so we got this thing today. Like, yeah,
Exactly.
the Aldhani people are just, they they don't even realize what's happening to them. They're stupid. You know what I mean? And it's just it's a funny conversation to me when you actually hear it, but it really does show and shed light. And this is what I was talking about earlier when I said you really have to focus in on the details, because if you've been following Star Wars and if you really been like cluing in to how things were in the Republic during the prequel era, you know, the Republic was completely different. Like Erica, you always say, they're very benevolent. They there's a lot more compassion, you know, for things. At least that's the way it appears. And then now here, you know, you got everybody's kind of adopted this attitude of, you know, we're the top dog. No one, it's that arrogance. It's that mindset of no one will be foolish to attack us. We're too powerful, you know, we just crap on the little people, you know, and that's pretty much their mentality. And this is juxtaposition to, you know, what Cassian and the rest are saying. It's like, this is why we fight, is because, you know, these people, like Cassian said, they don't care anything about you. They could care less. And now, you know, that's, and then when we see that, that's a prime example of that. It's like, okay, yeah, we got to do this thing. Yeah, it's cool. I mean, they don't even realize what's happening to them, you know, and it's kind of sad in a way, but you know, this is the world that's been built now. And even to see Gorn standing in the background listening to all this too, and that's that was the other part, is that he's having to fake being involved with them, but yet he's listening to this stuff and he's just like, I really can't wait until this is over with, because we're really going to stick it to you guys.
And you could see that on his face. You know, one of the things that was really cool is you could see on his face that he's trying to pretend like he's one of them, but he has all this disdain for them. And that, you know, exactly, he just can't wait till all this is done. And I mean, I just think that this is a really cool thing. And we can, with this episode, it actually pays more to bounce around a little bit. I know in the last couple we've been sort of going almost scene by scene, not quite, but for the most part. But there's, the reason why I say that too is because I think what's cool is you're seeing this attitude with the Empire, right? So this is kind of a new thing. It's like you said, there's a difference, and we see this a little bit even in the Bad Batch series. You have this difference between the way the Imperials, like the military and all that, sees things versus the average citizen of the Empire. The citizen of the Empire is still more or less thinking along the same lines as the Republic. They're thinking that, hey, everything's cool. Okay, things look a little different. Maybe a little bit more Durasteel and gray. But, you know, it's basically the same governing body. They're trying to bring peace to the galaxy. They're trying to do the right thing. The Imperials, though, seem to have adopted that same arrogance and superiority that Palpatine had, and kind of goes through. And one of the things that I think is a great juxtaposition, something that actually emphasizes this, is the one thing that we see from the old way, which is when Mon Mothma is in the Senate. It's practically empty. Like, there's almost nobody there. You know, and she's given her usual report, like what we would see in the prequels, but there's nobody there. It goes from, you know, these tens of thousands of life forms and all these pods, and all you see is a bunch of empty pods and a few people, and then they're distracted, of course, by the rebel attack that, of course, we'll get to a little bit later. But it's pretty much showing you that, look, this is different. You know, Palpatine obviously has had an effect. He's probably either rendered a lot of these guys powerless, or at the very least, he's very slowly eroding the old way, basically the former Republic. And this ties into what Lita, Mothma's daughter, said in the last episode of, I forgot what the line was, but it was just something to the effect of, you know, you think what you're doing is so important and it's meaningless. You know, that being a senator in the Empire is meaningless. You don't really have any real power. It's not like the Republic. So I thought that was a really cool thing, because you're seeing how this new empire actually, although it's not really new, because I mean we're probably about like 10 years in or something, but it's it's taken hold basically.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a crazy thing, is because like the empire is really um just cancerous. I mean, that's just the best way I can probably explain it, is that it's really become cancerous, and it's gotten to a point where um people, like you said, have decided to, like, okay, why show up to these meetings, basically, because for what? It's an empire, not it's not really a republic. And so, once again, though, it also harkens to the fact, and I love the way they tied it in, because even though they didn't say it, you could see it. It coincides with the line from episode 4, when Tarkin says, um, the last remnants of the Imperial Senate has been swept away.
Yep.
It's just kind of like, okay, it's pretty much dissolved now, because no one, we have such a tight grip on everything. We don't even need a Senate anymore. But you see how Palpatine has slowly started to his influence and everything that he's doing, he is slowly eroding, like you said, that's a great word for it, away at the whole government. And it's just like becoming a part of his thing, where he's just the sole entity, and it's like, okay, whatever I say go. Now he becomes basically the dictator. But yeah, watching this um and seeing the look on my Mothman's face, kind of looking around like, man, like, like, what happened here?
Well, here's the thing that's amazing to me, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I was actually surprised, because remember, this takes place like a good, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years before episode 4. And it was interesting to me that it was, I guess, that far along, that his plan was that far along, because like you said in episode 4, yeah, it's like the whole Imperial Senate has been swept away or whatever. And then, of course, it was either Mahdi or was one of those guys in the meeting was like, well, how are we going to maintain control of the, local systems or whatever? And that's when he comes back with the line with the regional governors. So now we're actually getting a little bit of a window into that system. Because, when they were rambling this in 1977, nobody knew what they were talking about. It's like, all right, Imperial Senate. Because remember, we didn't see any of this stuff. So we have no idea what any of this means. Regional governors, local systems.
Yeah.
I mean, you can sort of guess in context, but you don't really know what that means. You had the prequels, it's showing you what it was, and now we're filling in those gaps.
Yeah, because in episode 4, you really didn't see anything political per se. It wasn't really about the politics of it. It was kind of like, all right, well, you knew it was, all right, the Empire was just like this massive, dictatorship or whatever, but you really didn't see the inner workings of the political landscape of it all. And now throughout, the prequels, Rogue One, stuff like that, now we're starting to see, and now things, like I said, they're connecting those dots and making that connective tissue. So now people's like, oh, it's okay, when he says this line here, this is what he was referring to. Everybody's making that point-to-point connection. So, so far so good on that. And I think that's one of the great things that they've done. And that's what I'm saying, the dialogue. This show is very dialogue heavy, and sometimes it is kind of hard to kind of chew through. But if you're really paying attention to certain key things, you'll see, or hear in this case, the connective tissue that's kind of linking a lot of things, whether it's to the original trilogy, or even, as we said last episode, even some things for the sequel trilogy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I thought was really cool, too, was the fact that not only are they connecting a lot of these things, they're connecting the prequels to the original trilogy. They're introducing some concepts that we're going to see later on, obviously in the sequel trilogy. But then the other thing, and I've sort of alluded to this at the beginning of the show. Each of these episodes has a little bit of connective tissue to Rogue One. Now, that's something I think that we're going to see pretty heavily in Season 2. Because remember, as we've said, they announced that they knocked this thing down from a 5-season series to a 2-season series. And what they're doing is they're doing these little mini trilogies. So episodes 1 through 3 was a trilogy, 4 through 6, and so on and so on. And we know that Saw Gerrera is going to make an appearance at some point. K2SO is going to make an appearance at some point. And so you're going to constantly see these nods and ties to Rogue One. But I also think that it's really cool how they're revealing a lot of this stuff, right? I mean, you mentioned Gorn's character. That was really cool. I thought that, at the end, when Skeen ended up saying, hey, we could split this money and basically screw everybody over, that's showing you now, let's look at the rebel side. Not all rebels are created equal. They're doing it for different reasons. I mean, if you remember, in the last episode, I think it was the last episode, it was either 4 or 5, where Cassian was like, look, I'm doing this basically for money. I want to get paid. He was kind of in a jam. Luthen offered him a way out. It's like, okay, do this job, and we're good. And then you have, so that's more the mercenary version. Then you have Skeen, who's a little bit more nefarious about it. His motivation is almost purely money. So whereas Cassian's a little bit more neutral, Skeen seems to be way more self-centered and just particularly focused on himself, to the point where he's almost criminal, because his whole thing was like, look, we can kill everybody and basically split this money. Which I thought was really cool, that Cassian ends up killing him.
Yeah, I mean, and it shows you that he was so noble about it. And the thing is that although Cassian didn't want to be involved in this to begin with, right?
Right.
You're starting to see he's kind of almost having that Han Solo moment where
Completely.
he doesn't want to be a part of a rebellion. He just wants to do his thing and get the heck out of there. But what happens is that now he starts to see, like, okay, well, the people who make up this rebellion and what they're willing to sacrifice and what they're willing to do, you can see it's having this effect on him. And he's like, you know what? These people are cool. I want to actually help these guys out and do my part. And now he's becoming invested in it. And it's, that's the other thing too, is that I think that kind of ticked him off when when Skeen said that, was because they just got done risking their lives, and they actually had one person down the table, just trying to get out of there. And then you want to turn around and be like, all right, well, let's just betray everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, well, if I wasn't sitting out here, you'd be trying to do that to me, and I think that's kind of where Andor was with it. Like, oh, like, you're not fit to live to be around me, so I'll just rather take you off the table.
Well, not only that, but even after, okay, let's say they kill it and they're going to split, chances are Skeen would try to kill Cassian at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And take all the money. So absolutely. Right. Cassian's really good at just sort of killing people by surprise. That seems to be his thing.
Well, and he's, like I said, he's very astute and aware of kind of his surroundings, because you can even tell with Skeen, like, okay, he kept trying to know, he was nosying through his stuff, like he was being way more aggressive in his approach to try to find out who Cassian was. And then even to the point where he took off that the kyber crystal, and he's already mentioned, like, oh yeah, this thing is worth $30,000, like. And I was wondering, like, okay, why is he mentioning that? Like, and later on it revealed itself, like, okay, so he's money hungry.
Well, not only is he money hungry, But if you think about it, this just occurred to me. It's almost like he's trying to sow the seed of betrayal already, right? He's trying to show that, so maybe he could get somebody else to help off Cassian with him. So he's probably trying to feel out everybody's weaknesses and see if he can whittle down he's basically using everybody to steal this money so he can then betray everybody and take it himself. I think, anyway.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. One point of levity, though, I did like in this episode was the wife of, I think his name was Sergeant Linus.
Yes.
Yeah, and he was trying to put his sash on, and he was like, can you do something with this? This thing seems to be compressed. And she's like, or maybe you have expanded, it was like that typical husband and wife thing. But even just how he's running his household, like his son is kind of, these kids and these are kind of mouthy, but I did like Linus. He's like, no, he'll meet the back of my hand in a minute.
Yeah, exactly. It's like he's always sick. I mean, and that's another thing that I love is that, and you pointed this out with Mon Mothma's family, that they're showing these very normal, grounded family situations that people can relate to. Because even if your family is actually functional, everybody knows families that are like this. And even if your family is, completely amazing, every family has moments like that. It's like there's a function, the wife and kid don't really want to go, but it's important for the guy, so it's kind of like he's, and then kid, of course, I'm sure he was faking being sick, but there's that whole dynamic that everybody can relate to. And I think that that's just such a great thing that they do with this show. And they have time to do it. And again, this is one of the weaknesses that I felt they had, particularly with Obi-Wan, but even to a degree with the Book of Boba Fett, is that they didn't have enough episodes to really explore some of these more subtle dynamics. Because you do something, I mean, if you think about it, Obi-Wan had like half of the episode. This would have been the season finale if Andor were as long as Obi-Wan.
Wow. Yeah. We really stop and think
6
about
episodes. Yeah. This would be the end. We'd be talking about the season finale. I mean, when you really stop and put that into perspective.
But I think a lot of that too is because we got 3 episodes on the first day too, though. So kind of. But yeah, I get. But
with Obi-Wan, we got 2. We got 2 episodes the first day.
So that's true. You make a valid point.
I mean, but that's my point, is the fact that Andor is actually doing enough episodes to give us more depth, more character development, more exposition. You actually get time to let the thing breathe. And I think that that's really what's important. And I mean, the thing that's funny is, okay, so we're basically halfway through the season at this point. There's 12 episodes. We're on episode 6. So we have another 6 episodes. And you really don't know where the show's going to go now. Because they've essentially wrapped this up. And I mean, there's so many cool things in this episode, actually. You brought up that family dinner thing. I mean, the whole thing where there was that tension between the Aldhani when they were basically exchanging the little furball things or whatever.
The goat,
yeah, there was
fur or whatever.
Yeah, whatever that was, bantha, I don't know, whatever indigenous thing is on there. There was real tension in there. I mean, there was a lot of tension. There was I don't know about you, but I almost wonder, are these guys going to rise up against the Empire or something? Because you felt this. I kind of almost got this, for those people who've seen this movie, I kind of got that Wicker Man vibe, right? Where the whole point of the Wicker Man is, here you got this guy who's a cop, and he's going around and kind of flashing his badge and all this other stuff, and making people nervous. And the whole thing is, he's trying to solve this murder, and he's trying to get these people to cooperate and talk. And they're, of course, talking about this big festival and everything that they're going to have, and he doesn't know yet, but he's the sacrifice. He's the guy. He's actually the victim. So he's thinking that he has the upper hand, but the reality is he's going to be the one that is the victim. And that's sort of the vibe I was getting from that scene, where they kept showing that Donnie leader, and you just, I don't know, the look he had on his face and everybody else, and just the way that they showed the rest of the people, it was just like, wow, they setting us up for these guys are just going to totally take the Imperials out or what? And then, of course, it didn't happen. Because remember, this whole thing is called the Eye because that's this big celestial event that this whole episode is really based on. Because if you remember, part of the Rebels' plan was, hey, we're going to use this Eye event as cover so we can escape and not be noticed. And of course, it jammed a bunch of transmissions and things like that. So it disrupted the technology of the Empire enough that they could pull off this heist, which was essentially taking, I mean, what was it, like a 1 month or 1 quarter or something of the payroll?
Yeah, it was a quarter of the payroll for that station or for that, like the sector or something like that. I mean, there's a lot of money in that thing.
Yeah, it ended up being like, what, 80 million credits?
Yeah.
That's
and I don't think they got it all, though. That's the thing. But I still don't think they got all of it. It had to end up leaving because of the gunfight that they had and everything they had, had going on. But I don't think
they got at least 80 million. But you're right.
Yeah,
there was more than that.
Yeah, that was definitely the cause of dent, definitely. And so that was the thing about this whole episode too, was that you got the chance to see that group, and even how the other Imperials were trying to make the other Imperials believe that they were this other garrison, and they were kind of looking at them like, well, where are these guys from? And you don't look familiar, but
that was the first thing that I was thinking about the whole time. I'm like, don't you guys, I mean, it would be one thing if it's on like the Death Star or something, right? I mean, it's conceivable. Like, look, okay, I've never seen these guys before, but I mean, come on, it's like you're in this little station or whatever. And I mean, little by comparison, obviously, but they're in this smaller, more contained station, and all of a sudden, this strange groups of guys just are marching with them, and yeah, nobody's going, I don't know any of these guys. What's going on?
Right. Yeah. I mean, but at the same time, they're kind of taught not to question, to me, or ask too many questions. And when the whole thing started going south, I love how Gorn just kind of tried to flip it and was just like, you don't have clearance to be in here. You're interrupting this, and he's kind of like, yeah, I might be, but I feel like I'm interrupting something else though, and I feel like I should say something. This doesn't feel right. And then he keeps looking to his superior, like, tell him, and he won't say it. So then it's like, it ends up being this whole, massive blaster fight. So I thought
which was incredible, cool. By the way. Yeah. I mean, I thought that was, and again, even the action is more grounded, and it just feels more like this is just a normal heist movie, heist gone wrong, just with Star Wars stuff, right? With lasers instead of machine guns or something. I mean, it definitely had like a 24 vibe or
Italian Job almost,
Italian Job, yeah, I mean, and just some of the fights and all that stuff, because there's a lot of political thriller in there too, maybe a Jack Ryan thing or something. I mean, it really did feel that way. Or even some of the endings of some of the James Bond films.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, like I said, this was a great episode. I even loved the whole when the Eye finally did happen. Like, it was spectacular. Like,
it really was.
Like, that was cool. It's like amazing, like July, like on steroids or something like that. But
we know what else I really liked about this one.
Hmm?
I liked when they showed the TIE fighters in the rack and they showed the pilots getting into it.
Oh yeah.
And just, I mean, it seems kind of
Preparing.
mundane, but it's kind of cool to see that, though. Again, we're seeing,
Yeah,
and
because we're so used to see them always in flight all the time. We never really see them preparing to get into it.
yeah, I mean, sometimes you'll see them in hangars and stuff like that. But that whole scene actually had a very Rogue One feeling to me, especially when, well, it ended up being in the trailer and it was cut. But remember the whole TIE fighter coming up on Jin? That was
Yeah.
that
Yeah, that
was
was sweet.
really, yeah, that was cool. And
I
that's
really
kind of how this
would they
felt to
would
me.
Yeah. I'm wondering though, what happened? Why did they leave Cinta behind? Right.
Yeah, I don't know. That seemed like it was part of the plan though, because
It
she was talking to
was.
Vel saying, "Hey, promise me," or actually, it was Vel saying to her, "Promise me you'll be okay," or whatever.
Hmm.
And it just seemed like it wasn't like they were gonna meet up again right away.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I was wondering that too, because I'm like, well, what else does she have to do there? I mean, is there like some sort of cleanup that has to happen, or what?
Honestly, I thought she was gonna sacrifice herself in some way, like she got a bomb and she would just, I don't know. But it was just weird. I was just like, okay. But I love how everybody kind of like played their own, they all played their role. Uh and they kind of even like, that one moment where they're like, okay, this is where the trust comes in because now things kind of went awry and they had to have each other's back as far as in that gunfight. And they're like, all right, and do this and do that. And they really kind of stuck in for each other. So I really thought that was, cool to finally see them kind of be only for it to be dismantled right at the end because Skeen wants to be greedy at the.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was a nice payoff to actually see this thing finally. I mean, one of the things that I liked is it's not just an episode full of a bunch of dialogue around a campfire. I mean, don't get me wrong, there was a lot of really cool moments and all that. But now I think we see the balance. We saw some quieter scenes, and then we see some action, and it's not just mindless action, it's thoughtful action. And then, of course, one of the other things that I love about this is that we see the aftermath, right? Which is something we never see in Star Wars. Like, for instance, you saw the aftermath on the Rebel side, where they had to take, Karis to the doctor and try to operate on him, and which I thought that was a cool scene too, actually. And then, of course, Skeen betrays and gets killed and all that. But what the other thing that we didn't really address yet is now you go over to the Imperial side where Deidre's there and, they're all running in and they're having that, okay, this isn't a meeting, and nobody's going home and this thing's due by midnight and all this stuff. We're going to have to find out what happened and get to the bottom of this. And again, that's something that you don't usually see. Usually somebody's being choked out by Vader at this point. And it's nice to see that, no, there's things that are happening in that mid-level and how it's affecting the Empire. Look, there was this rebel attack, and then even in the empty Senate chamber, where Mon Mothma was trying to give a report and all that stuff, and then there was an interruption. That was really cool, because again, like we said, it showed the erosion of the Senate, and even though it's the Imperial Senate, it isn't the same as the Republic Senate. And then,
Yeah.
well,
Hmm.
go ahead.
Well, no, I was just saying, like, just to kind of piggyback off of that, like, yeah, that was cool to see it, like, on the military level. Like, okay, we got to find out what the heck happened out there, and I need to know now. Like, he's like, look, don't even sit down, don't get comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
because we got work to do, and, and he meant business, and quite frankly, it was just really cool, like you said, to see that flustered Imperial regime just kind of have to figure like, okay, what the heck happened to us? Then, like you said, in the Senate room, everybody's getting like the notification. It's almost like everybody's cell phones went off, and everybody's like, "Hey, man, did you see this? Did you see this? Did you see this?" And everybody's like, "Oh, okay." So yeah, I'm really curious to see like now the blowback. Like, how is the Empire going to respond to this?
Well, and then of course at the very end, we end up going back to Luthen, and of course he's playing the kindly antique dealer or whatever. And then somebody, they mentioned the whole rebel attack, and somebody's like, "Hey, do you have anything from Aldhani or whatever?" And he's like, "Let me check." And then of course he gives that big kind of sigh of relief and the laugh, and I mean that was obviously he was just really happy that obviously the attack happened and it went off, and now the rebels made a mark. But it was kind of creepy though, the way that, I mean, that scene, sometimes I almost wonder, is there more going on? Is it?
Yeah, I mean, he had a very like maniacal look on his
Right.
face.
It was
That's what
Palpatine-ish, actually.
yeah. In the way he kind of did things though, like the fact that he has his wig on and he had the robes, and then he'd go in the back and be a completely different person than who he. I mean, that's a Palpatine thing anyway. So
Completely. I mean, exactly. That's my thing. That's why I'm like, who is this guy really? Right? Because, and again, I mean, there were some things that we had talked about last week from the last episode, and we said, look, we agreed, because if you really want to check off the boxes of what we were talking about the last episode, we both wanted to see this mission finally. Right? It's like, look, you guys, you gotta, okay, great, leading up to it, I don't trust you. Yeah, we get it. Just show us the mission now. Well, we got that. And we wanted to see a little bit more of Mon Mothma's family. We didn't get that this time, but at least we got a little bit more of Mon Mothma and how ineffective her position is at this point. So we got that. And we still don't know as much about Luthen as we need to, and I have a feeling that that's going to unfold. And then, of course, we didn't get to see anything with Cyril. We didn't, so there's some things that they have to go, but overall,
I think those things are going to happen next episode, though.
They
honestly.
probably will, because that's going to be the start of the next trilogy of episodes. So with that in mind, what do you think, or what do you want to see in episode 7?
Episode 7, I want to see once again like that meeting. Like, what did they say in that meeting? How are things kind of how they finding the information? I want to know a little bit more about Deidre though, like because I want to know what her stakes and her role is in this whole game. I think we're going to find out more about Luthen and Mon Mothma are going to have a conversation about like, okay, phase 1 was complete. All right, how are we going to do this? And it makes sense though, like because they're a rebellion, and one of the things in the what was it, the 4th episode, when Mon Mothma came to Luthen, he kept saying like, about the money, like, well, I can't just pull money like I'm being watched too much. Well, now they just score $80 million in credits. Yeah. Okay, we can now buy certain things that we need to build up our rebellion, and if we need to hire people and to do certain
Time
jobs,
to get those X-Wings going.
Exactly. Like now you got some cash you can play around with to kind of do some stuff now. So it's starting to come into form for me a little bit.
Well, that is interesting.
So,
that's another thing that, again, it's something that I think I thought of over time, but it just hit me now as it ties into this, because it's yet another really cool, like, this is kind of a really cool area for this series to fill in some canon, is that, yeah, I mean, when we see these guys, even in Rogue One, it's like 5 years from now, they got like this whole fleet of X-Wings, they got bases, they got speeders, I mean, they're basically an army at that point. Now, they were still not quite united. That's what Jyn Erso and Cassian and those guys did, and by going to steal the Death Star plans on their own, it basically showed the rebels led by Mon Mothma at that point, hey, we have to actually band together, unite, and really be a cause, and not just an ideal, but an actual cause and some sort of an organized army, for lack of a better word. And then that's when they became a little bit more organized. But here, like you said, we're seeing the beginnings of that. And it's like, yeah, where did they get the money for all that stuff? Well, 80 million credits probably is good. I mean, I don't know what a ship. I remember Luke Skywalker saying, oh, we can almost buy our own ship for that. And I think that was like 80,000 or something. So, I don't know.
8,000. It was 8,000.
Was it 8,000?
Yeah, it's 8,000. It's like,
yeah,
8,000. Yeah, I could buy my own ship for that.
Right.
So
but, 80 million? Yeah, you buy a lot.
Exactly.
Well, and no doubt they probably captured bases and stuff like that from the Empire too if they defeated them anywhere. Like this one.
Yeah, you got to have medical supplies. You got to pay these doctors. I mean, you got a lot of stuff. You got to have an infrastructure to run a rebellion, and that's the thing that we're starting to see. This is the beginning and the seeds of those things, and so that just happened on one little planet of Aldhani. Well, you got a bunch of other systems that have imperial holdups and stuff going on all over the place. So, different people getting attacked, at various points, stealing certain ships or stealing certain things.
Well, they got to go after bigger targets too.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, well, what do we need to complete these missions? Okay, we need X amount of X-Wings. We need these type of blasters, or, we got to have outfits for everybody to wear when you're on Hoth so you don't freeze to death. There's a lot of stuff.
All the logistical stuff, exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like, man, 21B, he's out of Bacta. It's like we gotta get more Bacta.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so what come, and that's the thing, what comes so easily to the Empire because they have control over all this stuff. They're the government, so they can get this stuff pretty much at their whim. Especially since they have such a stronghold over places. So like, oh, this planet mines Bacta. All right, we're going to set up a base there. And that's what you guys do. You guys are going to make sure that the indigenous people there mine the Bacta for us. And so we are constantly have, but of a rebel, alliance or whatever, they don't have that luxury. So they got to go steal it or find other ways to acquire those things just so they can stay in the fight. So this looks really it seems like this is what we're going to get in episode 7. I think we're going to see the backlash of it, and the Empire is really going to be ticked off about this, and maybe this is where we see Cyril come back into the picture.
Well, I think so, because I think Deidre had a lot to do with it. Remember, she was obsessed with finding Cassian. I think that because the next logical step, too, is we got to find out, well, what's Cassian's next move? Because first of all, I agree with everything that you had said. I'd like to see that in episode 7. If I were going to add anything, I would say, well, I'd like to see you have Cyril and you have Deidre, and they're kind of on different sides of the coin in a way, but they're both centered in on Cassian, basically. As, okay, this guy has got to be, he must have something to do with all this. So it's going to be interesting to see how they further connect Cassian to the rebels. And juxtaposed with that, it's my favorite word today, we're also going to see how Cassian either gets connected to the rebels or maybe he's disconnected for a bit and then he comes back. Because here's the thing that's funny. Luthen obviously sought him out and had plans for him. So he's not going to let him just, yeah, here's your Kyber crystal back. See ya. He's going to try to get him back into the whole thing. And then, of course, we know he is there anyway because he's in Rogue One. He's like a full-blown, he's like one of Mon Mothma's, main people, it seems. So it's going to be really interesting to see, hey, how does he get connected with that? And maybe we start to see a little bit of that with episode 7, because it is going to be interesting to see what is the next storyline. What is 7, 8, and 9 going to be?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, we definitely know Cassian has to stick around for a little bit, but we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
figure out what draws him back in and how does he end up becoming the man that we see at the beginning of Rogue One. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I think that's where we're gonna start heading, in episode 7, 8, 9, and then we'll have those 10, 11, and 12, and that would be that.
That would
So
be it. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to believe. I mean, when you look at it that way, that it's 2 more
mhm.
main story arcs, really. So with that said, what overall final thoughts on episode 6?
If I had to rate episode 6, I probably would give it a solid 7.5, 8. It had a lot of great moments to it. I had um, we had some cool dialogue. We had some good action. Um, a couple things I wish we had a little bit more of, but that's just my choice or my opinion. But I think it was a solid episode, though. It was a really okay. It was a nice culmination to the story arc we've gotten so far.
Well, yeah, I'm going to join you. Solid 8. Because I don't necessarily want to give it a 9 or a 10 because I need to see. It's funny because I have a feeling what's going to happen is once we wrap this whole thing up, right? Once episode 12 is done, if I were to see these episodes again in the context of the greater storyline, then who knows? Maybe I would rank this episode even higher. Because it really did check off a lot of the boxes that I really wanted from this whole series. This is the first episode I could truly say that. I thought last episode was really good. I thought it was definitely improvement, and it was finally starting to pay off some of the moments that we were promised in the beginning, and then of course even by the people who were making it that were hyping up the show. However, this is the episode that I think really delivered on that promise. And so I'm only giving it an 8. I would actually be tempted to even give it a 9, but I want to reserve that for truly outstanding episodes, even though I think that this one's right up there. Again, there were some things that I wouldn't have minded seeing a little more of. There was some things here and there, but overall, solid episode.
Yeah, I think those 9s and 10s are really for exceptional things. And,
Yeah.
Let's not be too heavy with the
Right. Right. Exactly. And that's
But it's not about us though.
No, it isn't. It's not about us. It's about you guys. Definitely leave your comments in the comment section. Hopefully you guys have been chatting about this and everything. We could probably go through and read those because we include those. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be fun, I think, reviewing the next episode without question.
Oh yeah, it's always fun when we're talking Star Wars.
Yeah. Now, as far as Monday's episode goes, not really sure what to do. I've actually been kicking around a couple ideas. Some of the more philosophical type stuff that has come out about, what should be the next this, or, there was something where they actually released a bunch of the voice actors from Tales of the Jedi, and there's a few omissions that I was actually surprised to see. So, we could talk about that. Who knows? But we'll talk about something. That's a given. But the important thing is, let us know in the comment section what you guys thought of episode 6. What are some things that you liked about it? What are some things you didn't like about it? What did you give it as a rating? And, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. And we will see you guys on Monday at 8 o'clock. So with that, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.